First off, thank you everyone for the invitation to come and talk to you guys today about some of the work that we've been doing in our lab and how we basically build up our research program to incorporate these various aspects of the practice of science. And so I'm going to start just with this sort of overview, looking at the work that we're doing with the Blacktip Sharks down here in South Florida. And hopefully you can see kind of a green screen with a bunch of stuff moving around. Well, this is actually a drone video of a massive school of blacktip sharks right off our beaches here in South Florida in the wintertime. And every one of those little dots you see on the screen, every one of those is a shark, all right? And so these are huge numbers of animals that, that come down here and spend the winters down here in South Florida. Now, we've been doing this work for about a decade now. And it all started because I kept getting calls from the local media. The news helicopters would go out and they'd get videos and pictures. See, you have all these sharks along the beach, right? All these sharks, there's people on the shore there. I don't know if you can see in the upper sort of right-hand corner, there's three women standing on the beach debating whether they go in the water or not. And then there's all these sharks in the water, right? And this is what the helicopters would see. And, you know, here you've got a guy walking along the beach and I can count like a dozen sharks just in that frame alone. And so you've got people along the beach with all these sharks in the water, and the news agencies would call me and say, hey, listen, what's happening? What's going on? You know, you're the local shark guy. Tell us what's going on with these sharks. And I would say, well, you know, there's actually very little information about this phenomenon down here. We know what happens, but that's about all we know. It's interesting that this is so exciting to some people and so terrifying to others. To me, I would be delighted to have all these sharks all over the place. Not everyone is quite as enthused. Some of these homeowners who have sharks literally in their backyard are not quite as excited about it. I would love to have one of these houses and have sharks there. Some people, not so much. But the fact that you have so many sharks cruising down along the beach in the wintertime, when you have all the snowbirds from New York and New Jersey coming down to spend the winter as well. So you've got all the humans here, you've got all the sharks here. It's this confluence of events that happens. And it led to the question, what's happening? And that's what was posed to me. So I said, well, let's find out what's happening. You know, there's remarkably little information in the scientific literature, so we have to start from scratch and figure out what's going on. So the one thing we did know, or had a pretty good idea, is that these were blacktip sharks. These are Carcharodontis limbatus, it's a scientific name. These blacktip sharks, they occur around the world in warm waters around the world. And it's hypothesized that these sharks are moving up and down the coast. They're migrating. We know they come down here in the wintertime and then they go north. And that was about the extent of what we is to do the same thing that started this whole program in the first place. And that's from the air, right? It was the news helicopters that started the whole thing. And they have this sort of bird's eye view of what's happening, looking down on all these sharks. And so I figured, let's do the same thing. Let's look from the sky and study the sharks from the sky to give us an overall view of what's going on. And the way we did this, we started with an airplane, a Cessna, just would rent a 172. We'd fly it at about 500 feet off the surface of the water, fly pretty slowly, about 70 knots or so. And I would mount, you see in the middle there's a couple pictures of the open window of the airplane. There's a high definition video camera, and there's a still camera mounted with these massive aluminum brackets out the window of the plane. And these were aiming down. So as you were flying along, the video camera was constantly recording everything that it saw. And initially, we flew from Boca up to Jupiter, Boca Raton, Florida, up to Jupiter. And that would cover Palm Beach County, all right? That would cover the whole county. And so we did that initially, but then we expanded the program and we started covering everything from Miami up to Jupiter now. So the whole Tri-County area. So basically doubled our sampling length, but it gave us Miami, Fort Lauderdale and Broward County, and then all of Palm Beach County. All right. And so as we're flying along with these cameras mounted out the window of the plane, They're constantly recording, and then we're able to take that video footage back to the lab and count how many sharks did we see, and then where along the transect did we see these sharks? Were they mostly, mostly in the south end, mostly in the north end? How were they distributed? Mostly on inlets. We're able to start to formulate hypotheses and collect data to see what we could answer. So to sort of break this down for you, since this is probably novel, with the cameras mounted out the open window of the plane and the plane flying along parallel to the beach like this is sort of the cartoon view of what you would see, okay? There you can see the beach on the right-hand side of the screen. There's the plane flying in the air. You see all the sharks in the water, right? And the camera would see a field of view from the plane looking down, and it would cover about 200 meters. So from the edge of the beach to about 1 football field, 2 football field lengths off the edge of the beach. And we just sampled in that area. Now we know there's more sharks. And so any numbers I report are going to be small compared to the total number, but it gives us the ability to answer relative abundance, all right? And so, I can't sample the whole ocean, so I have to cut it off somewhere. And hence just looking at that stretch. But what this does is it focuses the attention on where the people are, right? The people are close to the beach, obviously. And so if we focus all of our attention where the people are, that gives us a good idea of what the opportunity is for human-shark interaction. Now, the nice thing is, even at 200 meters offshore, it's still pretty shallow. It's still no more than about 4 meters deep. And this is good for a couple of reasons. One is you're able to see all the way to the bottom. So it's not so deep that there's sharks down there that you can't see, right? You can see to the bottom. And the other reason is down here in South Florida, we're really fortunate to have like a light sandy sort of sea bottom, sandy sea floor, and the dark silhouettes of the sharks stand out quite nicely against that dark sea floor. And in addition, we have pretty clear water here, and it's largely due to the Gulf Stream current. The Gulf Stream brings warm, clear water right up against the shore here in South Florida. The Gulf Stream comes closer to the shore in Boca Raton than it does anywhere else on the planet. All right, so you've got the potential to bring this clear water close to the beach with a sandy bottom and lots of sharks. It enables us to do this sort of aerial study. So if you were to look down at what this camera is actually recording, this is an idea of what you're seeing. Now the white bar at the top of the screen, that's the strut on the airplane, and the little tire at the bottom of the screen there for the airplane. You can see the beach along the left side of the screen there, and this is what the camera is seeing. All those dots in the water, every single one of those is a shark, all right? Now, you're flying by, you're doing 70 knots, you've got about 1.5 to 2 seconds to count. How many sharks are there? Go. Stop. All right, how many did you get? You can't, right? There's no way. You obviously cannot count that many. That's why we need to video record and take the video back to the lab to count the numbers of sharks. Incidentally, in case you're wondering, in that frame alone, there are 1,678. I don't know how many people got that number, but that's what it was. But I'm going to show you now a video clip that, just a 30-second clip to show you what this transect actually looks like, okay? And so this is what the video camera is actually recording as we're flying along. So you can see the beach there on the left-hand side, and I hope you can see this. I know we're streaming, so I hope it comes across, but there's a bunch of little dots in the water as we're flying along there. See all the little dots in the water? All of those are sharks. And so you have to count those sharks. You can see how quickly we're moving. I mean, it's an airplane. I can't stop. And so you have to keep flying along, and all those are sharks, and you have to try and count those. That's why, obviously, we need to come up with a method to record, take it back to the lab, count it that way to get an idea of how many animals we're talking about here. And just to remind you how close you are, if you look on the left side of the screen there, there's the road, right? You can see there's A1A. You can drive down the road there and literally toss a rock and hit a shark. I mean, you're that close to the animals. Okay, all right. So as we're flying along and doing this gives us a great overview of what's happening with these animals down here in the wintertime. They're coming down. They're spending the winters We're able to fly and look at them directly count them. It's the best way to get some numbers on them, but it's not informative about what the movements of these animals are after they leave, right? When they leave the area and we can't see them anymore, now I need another way to study the animals, right? I can't keep flying up along the coast. I live here in Boca Raton. And so the next iteration from this was to instrument the sharks with transmitters so we can see where they're going after they're leaving here. And what we would do is we go out fishing, we'd catch a shark, we'd bring it up beside the boat, we do a little boat-side surgery. We make a little tiny incision, not even an inch long incision in the body of the animal. You insert a transmitter inside them. These transmitters are about the size of your finger, all right? And they last for anywhere from 6 to 10 years, all right? So these are long life transmitters. And they're individually coded. They put out a discrete ping, ping, ping. And so now, after you instrument the animal and you suture back up again, and then you take the ropes off, take the hook out of its mouth, and you let it go, and it swims off on its merry way. But now it's pinging. Now it's tagged with this little transmitter. And so now, as the shark is swimming off and going about the rest of its life, it's got this little ping, ping, ping emanating from it. And there are a series of these underwater listening stations, these acoustic receivers all along the coast. There are hundreds of them. And these are operated by various agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, university researchers, private consulting companies. All of these organizations, we all share a similar technology, and we all share our data. It's part of this data management or data sharing plan that everyone has. And so if one of my sharks is detected off North Carolina, whoever is running that array, they tell me. And if someone's snook, they tagged off Georgia, is detected on my receivers, I let them know, right? And so we all share data this way. And this enables us to be really successful in leveraging the fact that these animals may be moving over a wide area. All right, it's not just local populations that we're studying. These are wide-ranging populations, and by partnering with all these other institutions, it enables us to get a really good idea of where these animals are going, and we're able to piece together their movements. And so the receiver is anchored to the seafloor. There's a float that keeps it upright in the water, and anytime a shark swims by with a transmitter, that transmitter goes ping, 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 and the receiver detects it. And it logs the ID number, the date, the time, which shark was at which receiver at which time. And then we pool it all together and we're able to sort of cobble together the movements of the animals. It's detected here off Boca, then it was detected off Cape Canaveral for a month, then it was detected off Jacksonville, and it was detected off, wherever. And you're able to piece together the movements of these animals. And because these are long life transmitters, you're able to do this for multiple years as they migrate up and down, up and down, up and down. Over many years, you're able to get a really good idea of the movements of these animals. What we do, though, is all those data are logged to these receivers, and we have to go out and download them. So about every few months, we'll go out in the boat, we'll dive down with their scuba gear, pick up the receiver, download all the data onto our laptop, and then dive back down again, reattach it, and then jump back in the boat and go home. All right, now we have all the data and we're able to piece this together. And this is great. We're able to get really good information this way, but there's a certain amount of lag time, right? I mean, it happened, but you don't find out that the shark was there until 3 months later when you go and download the data. And being impatient, we want the data now. I want it now, come on. It's this immediate gratification. And so the next way of looking at this is to employ what are called satellite transmitters. With a satellite transmitter, what you're doing is you're catching the animal, you do the same thing, you bring it up beside the boat, and now you're affixing this little satellite transmitter to the fin. And you can see there that you have this long antenna that extends from it, and now anytime the shark swims along and the fin breaks the surface of the water, that antenna can talk to an orbiting satellite, an Argos satellite. And it gives you instant instant communication, basically. I literally get an email to say shark number XXX pinged off such and such a location. Here's a lat long. And I'm able to see exactly what these sharks are doing basically in real time. And the nice thing about this is that this is a good complement to the long-term data that we're getting from the acoustic receivers, which last several years. These satellite transmitters are a year at the most because they're much more energetically expensive to talk to a satellite, all right? But now what we're able to do is say, all right, tag a shark here on this date, and then every one of those dots represents at least one time when the shark's fin broke the surface of the water and reported its position to an orbiting satellite. And we're able to basically just go and connect the dots, right? Just dot to dot to dot, and see where these sharks have gone. So this is one example of a track from, this was way back in 2017. This is the first shark we tagged with a satellite transmitter. And it's able to inform us about where these animals are going. Now, the nice thing about this is taken together, both the acoustic data and the satellite data inform us about the movements of these animals along the coast. And we're able to start testing some of these hypotheses. You know, we know that they're here in the wintertime. Where are they going beyond that? That's what we're trying to find out, right? And so, And so if you look in the literature, it says that the range of these blacktip sharks goes from about South Florida to about Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, all right? And then Hatteras in the summertime, and then they come back down here in the wintertime. What we found, though, is based on our telemetry data, these sharks are actually going much farther. Anyone want to take a guess where they're going? I will not leave you in suspense. These sharks are reporting as far as Long Island now, all right? And so the historic range, which was reported about 70 years ago, is actually shifted dramatically. Their migratory range is now about 50% farther than it was just a few decades ago, all right? And this corresponds very well with changes in water temperature. We've looked at historic data on temperature, and temperatures increased by about 1.5 Celsius in that time. And this has corresponded to an increase in their range as well. And so this is really indicating that, you know what? The movements of these animals are much more extensive than we previously thought, okay? And these the techniques that we're using are enabling us to find out what their range actually is. But it comes back to that question, temperature, right? Is it temperature driving it? Well, one way of looking at this is to get a finer resolution of the temperature that these sharks are experiencing. And we are incorporating now a technique known as an animal-borne data logger. And what this does is this data logger package, it records temperature and depth and light level and swimming velocity and magnetic heading, 3D acceleration. So, you know, your phone, right? Your little iPhone keeps track of how many steps you take every day. You do your 10,000 steps today, right? Probably not, you're sitting here. But at lunch, go and get your 10,000 steps. But what this does is it's doing the same thing. It's recording the number of steps, the number of tail beats the shark is doing as it's moving, right? So it's giving us this 3D acceleration information. And with this suite of data, it gives us a much more fine scale, but also a much more robust view of what these animals are experiencing. Not only are they here and then they're there, but what's the temperature? How deep are they going? How fast are they swimming? You know, all this information that we're able to gather from these data loggers really gives us a much more comprehensive understanding of the movements and the ecology of these animals. Maybe they prefer to go deeper at night and you know, swim faster during the mornings or something. You know, who knows? I mean, we're literally just in the process of working up these sorts of results now. So I can't even tell you an answer yet. But this is the next iteration, the next step from acoustic, which is great for long term, satellite, which is great for instant information, but it's just positional information. Now data loggers, which give you a lot of information. But the trade-off here is these are relatively short term. You know, it would be great if it logged this information for 6 years and then reported it, you have a fantastic view, but it's way more data than we can deal with. And they simply, the batteries aren't going to last that long. So these are short-term, high resolution, as opposed to the other ones, which are medium-term, good resolution, and the acoustic is longer-term, but lower resolution, okay? So taken all together, whoops, that's just showing that's the data logger package. It pops off the animal, that's at a satellite transmitter, so we can find it again and pick it up and download all the data from it. Now, the next thing that we're doing besides looking at the movements of these animals is getting more into the fine scale movements of these of the animals when they're here. And for that, we incorporate aerial drones. Now, drones, they're cheap now, relatively cheap now. They're accessible. It's easy for people to fly them. You can have, I've seen little 5-year-olds fly drones, and they're good. They're the little children, the kindergartners were great at doing that. I was surprised. Easy, accessible, and because these sharks that we're studying are so close to the beach, we can literally go down to the beach, throw a drone into the air, and fly it out over the schools of sharks and get some really compelling footage. All right. This enables us to get information on group dynamics. For example, are they all swimming in a nice parallel, organized, polarized school? Or are they all sort of milling around doing their own thing? How quickly are they moving? Are they beating their tails rapidly? Or are they just sort of slowly cruising along? You can quantify things like tailbeat frequency. And we also, you can get a lot of empirical data from this sort of top-down view. But we also use it in our fishing. And so in this example, whoops, you can sort of see us, our boat is cruising up beside the beach. You can see all those sharks in the water. And again, notice how close they are to the beach, right? That's where the people are. But we're able to fly the drone. We're able to say, okay, that's where the sharks are. And that's where we drop our fishing gear. So we basically use the drone to cheat and see where the animals are and make our fishing more efficient. Why throw your line in if they're not there? So let's find out where the animals are and let's drop our lines in right there. And so again, it provides us an opportunity to look, and here you can see a nice polarized school. They're all swimming together. They're all swimming at an X velocity. We could even calculate how fast they're swimming. All this sort of information you're able to gather from this sort of top-down view. Not to mention the fact that it's fun for these sort of public outreach opportunities to really engage people and say, wow, they're really that close to the beach. All right. Now, there's one other thing that we've been able to incorporate. The last thing I'm going to mention is something that's very simple, inexpensive, but pretty cool. It's called a block cam. All it is you can see these animals. They're in shallow, clear water close to the beach, right? This top-down view is great, but everyone wants to see the fisheye view. What are they looking like underwater? To address that, we've been taking a GoPro camera, affixing it to a concrete block, literally a camera on a block, and throw it overboard. Well, there's a float, so we can get it again. But you start recording, you drop it overboard, and you go away, and you leave it. And now anytime a shark swims by, the camera's recording it, and you're getting some cool footage, right? And so to give you an idea, this is the sort of thing that we're seeing, all right? The camera is just sitting there, and it's not a diver in the water. It's not someone moving. As far as the sharks are concerned, it's like a rock. It's just this thing sitting on the bottom. And they don't care. They swim right up to it. They're not disturbed by this thing in their environment. And you're able to get this sort of, fish school view of what these sharks are doing as they're swimming along here. And again, you're looking at swimming kinematics. You're looking at, how many males are there versus females. You're able to confirm, in fact, that they're all blacktips. And so the block cams are, again, an inexpensive way, an easy way to get some really good data that the students are able to analyze. All right. And so I'll just end by acknowledging the Colgan Foundation, which has funded this work for the past several years, and they've been strong supporters of us for many years. And if you aren't following us, I encourage you on Twitter or Instagram. We are at Shark Migration. So by all means, feel free to start following our work. And our Facebook page is FAU Shark Migration as well. So feel free to follow us there as well. With that, hopefully I managed to finish us off, and I'm going to turn it back over. And thanks so much again for the invitation. I I look forward to working with a few of you throughout the next couple of days.